We're going to create infrastructure with Terraform, and in our example, we're going to be using Docker. So we're going to start out here. We're just going to start out with the example, and then we're going to talk about some of the details and some of the terms used and what each piece of the configuration is and what commands that we're going to run. So if you saw our previous video, we showed you how to install Terraform and did a quick example in that video. We're going to use basically the same example, but we're going to go into a little bit more depth with this. Now, this video is part of a series, so you're going to want to check the playlist that comes along with it, and you're also probably going to want to subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell icon. So, any case, also check the links in the description for useful documents that go along with this video, for our written guide, and for links to other videos. Any case, moving along here, we're going to start out by creating a configuration. Now, basically, when you create a Terraform configuration, you create a directory, and everything is held within that directory. So we're going to start out by creating a directory. mkdir test1. We're going to call our directory test1, and we're going to cd into that directory. And inside the directory, we're going to create a file. It's going to be a .tf file for tf for Terraform, so vi main.tf. So that's going to be our default Terraform file. Now, Terraform will read, we can create multiple files with a .tf, and Terraform will read them all in, but this is going to be our default file, and in a simple example, this is going to be the base file that we're going to use. Any case, moving along here, we're going to copy and paste our example in here, and we're going to tell you a little bit about what everything does. So there we go. Now, I have it zoomed in so it's easy to read on the video, but that also means you can't see the whole thing all on the screen, but you can see most of it. So, any case, I felt like this font was probably what will be easiest for most people to be able to read on the video, depending on what device you're using or whatever else. Any case, yeah. So basically we have what you call blocks. Oh yeah, and so, well, you know, let me just run through this really quick, and then I'll tell you about blocks and the terms, and I'll show you another snippet that you might need if you're using Windows. So, you're going to say, so you have this first block up here. So this first section says Terraform, and this defines Terraform related, just general Terraform related variables. And one of the blocks within this block is required providers, and it tells you what providers are going to be required. And if you remember from the previous video, a provider is just a plugin that allows you to work with a given cloud platform. So any case, so in this case we're doing Docker, so we require Docker. You could define more than one cloud provider if your Terraform file were to pull in resources from, say, AWS and Docker. You might define both of them. In this case, it's just Docker. So you define Docker, and you tell it where to pull it from and the version that you want. I believe, yeah, the version would be optional. We'll come back to these in a little bit. Then you have a block. Whoops. You have a block here for this is to define variables for that provider. We don't have anything in here right now. We can add things for that in later examples. Any case, this next block basically defines a resource, right? So a resource is basically, this defines an actual image, a Docker image, and down here you see there's another resource. This defines the container. Now, so I should probably just cover what a resource is right now. So a resource is, and we've pretty much covered what blocks are. Blocks are just sections of the code. So a resource is that's basically what it is, a cloud resource. It could be anything like an image, it could be a container, it could refer to a virtual machine, a piece of storage if you're using like object storage or something like that. It could be like a VIP, like a piece of network infrastructure. Any piece of infrastructure is called a resource. So we have resources that are defined in here. Now, yes, we have blocks and we have resources. Now, the way the syntax works for this resource, the actual resource would be defined between these curly brackets, and there are the details of it. Now, you're going to have the word resource, everything before this curly bracket, you'll have three things, right? You have the word resource, then you'll have the type of resource. In this case, it's a Docker image. And then you'll have the name for this resource. So the name for this specific resource in this file or in this configuration is called Nginx. So this isn't telling us the type of resource. This is just telling us the name. This is the name for this resource. And now here we have an actual variable for the name defined in here. And we have another variable, keep locally. Now, we have over here another resource defined. The type of resource is Docker container versus before we had Docker image. And we are going to also name this one Nginx. So this is going to have the same name. Now you could uniquely identify this by the resource type and the resource name put together. Now, if you see down here, you have the image. Well, one of the variables defined for this resource is image, and you'll see this is referring to the previous resource that we created here. So you need to pass an ID for an image. Now we want to get the image ID for a given image, and we want it to be the image that we just pulled down in the previous resource. So we want to find out what the ID is of the previous resource. So we're going to refer to the previous resource. So if we want to address this first resource over here from the second resource, we refer to it by first its resource type and then the name. So that's what we're doing here. Resource type, Docker image, and then the name, Nginx. And then we refer to a variable inside that, or an attribute inside that, image ID. And that's how we get the image ID out of that to assign to this variable. So our Docker container resource can refer to our Docker image resource, because the Docker container is going to use the Docker image to create the container. And we're going to name our container tutorial. So, any case, moving along here, we've also defined some ports. So this is a separate block which has variables inside it, internal and external. So for Docker, internal port is going to be what Nginx listens on, and the external port is going to be what that maps out to. So externally on the local host that this runs on, it's going to be port 8000. So, any case, let's see, that is pretty much the end of the file there. So we're going to talk a little bit about, I have some notes about, well, first I'm actually going to show you another snippet here. I'm going to copy this. I'm just going to temporarily paste this in here just so you can see it, even though it wouldn't be valid here because I'm running Linux right now. But if you were running Windows, you would change this provider. So instead of this, the provider block would actually, it would actually have something in it, and you have to specify the host. So this will help it find the Docker instance. So on a Windows system, this is how you connect to Docker. But if you're on Linux or Mac OS, you don't need to specify that. So just worth noting. And if you want to be able to copy and paste that or anything else we're doing here, remember, check the link in the description. So in any case, a few things that I wanted to cover in terms of definitions. So I just have a list of things to go over here real quick. So we have Terraform block. We've covered that. That's basically anything in here. These are blocks. They're defined by a header and curly brackets, right? So this is a resource block. This is the provider block. This is the Terraform block. So those are blocks, right? The config file is built out of blocks. And then we have a specific required providers block, lists all the providers to be used. We covered that right here. It specifies the source, and this is one thing I did want to come back to. The source can also include the host name. Now, by default, this is going to be going to the host for the Docker for the Terraform registry. So we have a Terraform registry. It's going to be pulling down the plugin for Docker from there. So this would be the plugin for Docker on the Terraform registry. So by default, it includes the host name. But you could actually specify a different registry, or you could optionally just specify that host name if you wanted to, and you would put the host name at the beginning here, followed by the actual plugin that you want. So this basically is an actual URL, but this is just the short form of the URL. So worth understanding that. Now the version here, this is optional. There are a few things to say about it though. So actually, before I forget, I should go back to the source real quick. Now the registry is going to, it's basically going to say registry.terraform.io. That's where the registry is. That's the host name for that. Anyways, check the link in the description if you actually want to be able to copy and paste that text. But anyways, coming back to the version, a few things you could say about that. So it's optional. You don't have to specify it, but it's recommended for consistency. And without it, the most recent version would be pulled down every time, which sounds like a good thing. And if that's what you want, great. But if you want consistency, then set a version. So if you want the latest version at the time of creating this config, set that. That way, every time you create infrastructure with this configuration, it's going to create it the same way using the same version. So you're going to have a repeatable process. So if that's what you want, if you want it to be stable, repeatable, consistent, then you want to peg the version to a certain version. Now, behavior might change with later versions of the plugin. So if it pulls down the latest version, you might have unexpected behavior. You could have surprises. So yeah, if you want consistency, peg it to a version. If you just want the latest version blindly, no matter what, then leave the version out. So it's up to you, but it's recommended to leave it in there. Any case, the provider block. So we've covered that, and we showed you a variation that we can do with that for Windows. You would actually add some variables in here for Windows, and for other providers, there might be some variables you want to pass to it as well, like for AWS or whatever else. But in any case, that's that. Anything else you would do with this is a topic for another day, for another video anyways. So anyways, moving along here, and we do have a lot of other videos in this collection, so just another reminder, check those out. So any case, and we've covered resource blocks. It defines a resource, so we've pretty much gone over everything there is to go over with that. We've gone over the format for it and a bunch of examples. And let's see here. So I think the next thing is we're going to move along to the commands. So we're going to save this. We're in VI, so we're going to do W to write and Q to quit. So anyways, save that file. Now, I am going to be using, so I only have Docker permissions as root, so I'm going to be using sudo here. Now, if you had granted your user Docker permissions, then, which is a pretty normal thing to do, then you could just run the Docker commands directly. So a lot of these commands I'm going to be using sudo. Remember to use sudo if you need sudo access for Docker. If you don't need sudo access for Docker, or if you're not using Docker, you're using something else like AWS, then you probably won't need sudo. Just be aware of that. So in any case, I'm going to quick show you what's in Docker right now. So Docker ps sudo, as I was just saying, and no containers, at least no running containers. I'm going to do -a. I think there's a leftover container in here, and a -a will list all containers running or not. And you see there's a hello world container in here. So this one's already here, exited 4 days ago, just to show you that that's left over, because we're actually going to create a container. And we're going to say docker image sudo, and there we go. So we have a hello world image here. So this is listing out the images available for Docker, and it only has hello world. So we're going to be pulling down another image here in just a bit. So first command we're going to run, first Terraform command we're going to run is Terraform init. So you'll notice we're here inside and I'm going to run an ls-a to show all files. Now we just have our Terraform config. So I'm going to run Terraform init. Now, all right, there we go. And this is going to, so what this does is this pulls down everything you need to be able to provision this type of infrastructure. So we're using Docker. It'll pull down the plugin for Docker, Docker. So notice here it says initializing backend, initializing, whoops, I'm dragging the window here, initializing provider plugins, and this is the Docker plugin that we specified at the version we specified. Matching, okay, so it says matching similar to this version. So apparently that gives us version 3.0.2. So I believe if you were to say the exact version, if you didn't use this tilde, it would peg it to exactly 3.0.1. Any case, so basically it's pulling down that plugin and doing a few other minor things. So if you look here in the directory, so if you run ls, so it pulls down everything you need. That's the Terraform init. You'll do that once just to initialize the directory with all the stuff you need. So you run ls, you see that your main.terraform file is there. But if you do it with a -a, you'll see there's a couple hidden files here. Now, you're going to have a hidden Terraform directory that contains all that stuff that we needed, and you'll have your lock file right here. So yeah, the Terraform directory contains your downloaded providers, the plugins, in this case, the Docker plugin. Now, it also, yeah, so, and we have our lock file there. So yeah, pretty much all I'm going to say about those hidden files for now. I'm going to take a quick look in here just to look real quick. And it's kind of self-explanatory. Has a providers directory. And it shows stuff from registry terraform.io. That's the URL for the Terraform registry. And this would apparently be the person who created the Docker plugin. And it has Docker. And it has the version and our platform and a bunch of actual files here. Okay, in any case, so that's getting off topic a little bit there. So we have another, now I showed you how to do this really quick in the previous video. So you would run a Terraform init, Terraform plan, and the plan just shows you the plan. It shows you what changes it's going to make. Then you do a Terraform apply, and that will actually apply those changes, and you have to type yes to confirm, and it shows you again the changes you're going to make. So I've run the Terraform init, right? And the next step would normally be a Terraform plan and a Terraform apply. But I'm going to quick show you a couple other commands real quick before we do that. There is a Terraform format command, Terraform FMT, that will format all of your code and make it neat and clean looking. So you can run that. I believe that just basically refactors your code or whatever. So that will neaten things up, make it consistent. Now you can also run another command called Terraform validate, and this will check for any errors or invalid syntax. Success, configuration is valid. Now I actually feel like I'd like to break this just to see what happens. So main.tf. Now let's say if I added some invalid text here, like add 3 X's at the beginning there, right? Now run Terraform validate, and it says error unsupported block type. It detected an error right there. So, I mean, it's a pretty obvious error, but, you know, an intentionally created error. So validation tells us our syntax was wrong. So that's pretty nice that it's able to check that for us. So let's go ahead and remove those extra characters, write and quit. So we saved our file. Let's validate it again. And success, configuration is valid. Now, I'd actually like to really quick, I know I should get on with the rest of the stuff that I'd like to show you in this video, but I do want to just try this out just to see. I'm going to add some unnecessary things in here that don't necessarily break it, but I'm going to change the formatting on this a little bit, and I want to see if it fixes it. But first, I want to check, I want to make sure that it's still valid. All right, it does not like that. All right, so validate. Okay, we can validate it. So it's not valid to put these So spaces do matter. Even even white space matters. If you put these curly brackets on the same line, it doesn't like it. Okay, in any case, so it does allow us to add some extra spaces in here, so that's still valid. I'm curious if our format will fix that. FMT. Now let's check the file, and it did not remove. I'm not sure what formatting it's going to fix, but that's about as far as we're going to go with that command in this. So supposedly that fixes formatting. It didn't remove those extra spaces. I'm not sure if it's supposed to, but in any case, I'm not going to go any further with that command in this video. So anyways, we're going to move along to the Terraform plan command. Terraform plan. Okay, and the reason that's failing is because I need to use sudo. Now, normally if you were dealing with like remote infrastructure where you just need the permissions on the remote system, as long as you have like your API set up or whatever, you're fine. If we had Docker permissions, like I mentioned before, if we had Docker permissions with this user, you would just run Terraform plan. We don't, so we need root permissions. You either need to grant them to the current user or use root permissions. We're going to use root permissions today. So sudo terraform plan. Normally you just run a terraform plan. So we're going to run sudo, and there we go, it ran. So what this does is it tells us the changes that are going to be made, and it's a little easier to view all of this when it's zoomed out and the font is a little bit smaller. But then it's, again, like I mentioned before, I just made the font really large so people can actually see my video. Any case, yeah, if you were really working on something, I'd have this taking up the whole screen, and it would be, I'd be able to view everything in one shot. I feel like I should zoom this out a little bit just so you can see a little bit more. All right, so there we go. We can see, all right, this is a little bit easier to see just for this example. All right, so now all the text lines up and everything. So here's what it does. Sudo terraform plan, and it tells us it's going to create these, it's going to perform these actions, it's going to create these resources. So it says Docker container Nginx will be created. So it tells us it's creating a container. It shows us the resource and a bunch of variables related to that resource. Some of them it tells us what it's going to do, like must run, the name, the network data. So a lot of these say known after apply because it doesn't know what these variables are going to be until after we've actually applied the changes and brought up the container. It won't know for sure what they are. But a lot of them it does know ahead of time. Some of them it doesn't, right? Like it knows the ports and stuff like that ahead of time, what IP it's going to be on. It doesn't know, like security options or network data, stuff like that. It will know afterwards though. So any case, it specifies two resources, the Docker container that's getting created, and it specifies the Docker image resources that's getting created. And you'll notice it has a plus sign here. That means it's getting created. So plus sign for being created and a minus sign for being removed. Now in this video, we're just creating the infrastructure. In the next video, we're going to be modifying and destroying the infrastructure. So again, check the playlist that this video is a part of, and check our other videos out. Check the links in the description too. But yeah, next video we're covering destroying infrastructure and modifying an infrastructure. We're just creating the infrastructure and talking about some terms and definitions that are important to know in this video. So in any case, that's a Terraform plan. It tells you what it's doing. It's going to be creating. We don't see any red minus signs. We just see pluses, meaning it's just creating stuff. And it says down here, plan 2 to add, 0 to change, 0 to destroy. So it's relatively safe. But if we had if this were a much more complicated configuration, maybe something managed by multiple people, and say, for example, someone else had removed something from a config file, and maybe they didn't mean to apply it yet. Maybe they're waiting till Friday to remove it or something, and you went in and tried to run this with a bunch of, all you want to do is add some infrastructure, but there was some code in there that removes infrastructure, and you failed to review this, and you hit apply, it would apply that change, and actually you could end up destroying infrastructure. So you always want to review this and make sure you know what it's doing. It's only doing what you expect it to do and what you told it to do. So yeah, that's why that's there. So after Terraform plan, we're going to say Terraform apply. And this does the same thing. Again, it gives you some output telling you what is going to be applied, what changes are going to be made. And down here, it lets you type, it makes you confirm. If you want to continue, you have to type yes. Hit enter. It's going to go ahead and make those changes. And there we go. So you can see from the output, creating a Docker image, creation completed. So Docker actually had to download that image again to create it. And then it creates the container, which is a little bit quicker. And it says apply complete, resources, 2 added, 0 changed, 0 destroyed. So we're going to want to take a look at what we've done. So just to show you, sudo docker ps, we now see a running container called tutorial. Now I'm just going to run a -a just to show you. So we have 2 containers here. One is running, one is not. This is the running container that we just created 39 seconds ago. And this is the down container that was exited 4 days ago. In any case, that was when I installed Docker on this system. So in any case, I am going to check. Oh yeah, I'm going to also show you sudo docker image ls, and you'll notice, remember at the beginning I showed you we only had hello world, and now we have Nginx. We have the Nginx image here. So we have a Docker image for creating Nginx. That was just pulled down today based on on our Terraform configuration that we applied. So let's see, we can also inspect the state. Terraform, there's a Terraform command. We can say Terraform show, and this will show us the state of our infrastructure, right? So you'll see a Docker image, and now notice it shows you all those details about the image that it wasn't able to tell you, it wasn't able to predict the exact values for them before. Now it can. If you scroll up here, we have some of the predicted values, and then all those things that it said won't know until they're applied, like network data. It now has been assigned a network address, all this other stuff, and all these other things. They're all assigned now, so you can actually view the state of our infrastructure now. Now it's getting all of this information from our state file, which is held locally. It's one of those. Yeah. In any case, it's held locally in here. In production, you would generally want your state file to be somewhere shared. Commonly, people put it on, like, for example, object storage like S3 or somewhere similar to that. Somewhere shared, somewhere locked down. It can contain sensitive information, so keep it locked down. Keep the permissions tight on it, stuff like that. Don't put it shared somewhere where people can see it. But you probably do want to keep it in like a centralized online location. That's what people normally do. For testing or development, it's totally normal to keep it in the actual directory in a file. So the state file is kept in a file, and when we run that command, it's reading from the state file. Any case, what else could we say here? So yeah, it needs to be kept secure. Now let's list some resources. So we did state show, we did Terraform show. Now we can say Terraform state list. And this just lists out the resources in our state, and that's it. And before I forget, I also did want to show you, I wanted to show you the application in action, right? So I did cover this in the previous video, but here we go. This is Nginx running on port. So it's being exposed on port 8000. It's running on port 80 and being exposed to the outside. So the internal port 80, the actual server is listening on that port. But Docker is exposing it on port 8000. So that's what we configured in our Terraform config. Our Terraform config told Docker to set up a container that exposes on this port, and that's exactly what it's doing. So we controlled that directly within our Terraform config. So there you go. This is our application. This is Nginx running, serving a web page on our local host, and we set this all up with Terraform. So Nginx running on a container. So there you go. that's basically everything we wanted to cover for creating infrastructure. We've created some infrastructure today. We've shown you how to do that, how to create a configuration, gone over some terms and stuff like that. It's basically everything we wanted to do in this video. So do check out the next video. Check out if you didn't see how to install. If you didn't see our video on installing Terraform, go check out the previous video. We have an intro video and an installation video. Our next video is going to be how to delete stuff and how to modify stuff. So yeah, definitely check out the playlist and hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. And that's it for today. So thanks for watching. We'll see you on that next video.